Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the AUD podcast channel. I'm your host Khaled Abu Zubain. We are honored to have Ambereen Musa as our guest on the show today. Ambereen is the founder and CEO of Yabi, the first financial education platform in the region, and is on a mission to support people in their journey to find financial freedom. She has been listed in the top 50 most influential women in the Arab world by Arabian Business. She was the winner of the Woman Entrepreneur of the Year by the Entrepreneur magazine, and her previous venture Souk Al-Mal was listed as one of the top 100 most promising SMEs to get acquired, which was successful last year. In this episode, you'll learn how to start managing your personal finances, the truth about credit and credit cards, planning for financial freedom, and discovering your money script. Please join me in welcoming to the show Miss Ambereen Musa.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. So, Ambereen, we've been following your profile for a while, and the stuff you've done with Souk Al-Mal, and your presence in the region, in the world of finance, you're very highly regarded. And we wanted to take a new angle with this week's episode, and because we feel that finance and more personal finance is something that growing up, even to this day, we were never taught. We were never taught how to manage money, how to think about money, what a money mindset is. That term is something I've realized a few weeks ago. I didn't even know it was a thing. So we wanted to bring you on to kind of shed a light on what personal finance means, how should we be thinking about money, and talk a little bit about your experience, building Souk Al-Mal and, startups and that world, because fintech is quite a big thing here at the moment as well. But before we get into everything, Ambereen, why don't you give all of us a little bit of background about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, sure. I do love the question around personal finance. I think I've kind of grown up in it now, and it's been probably more than 2 decades I've been in education and personal finance. So taking a step back, I was brought up in Mauritius. So I was born and brought up there, lived there until I was 18, and eventually got a scholarship to study in Australia. When you're from a small country, a small island of 1.2 million people, I think there is that mentality of getting out and discovering the world. Mm-hmm. And parents were very pro that. My dad was he's always been my rock, and he was a driving force behind women's financial independence. So it started really early.
Oh, really? Your dad was the one pushing for that?
Massively. He took me aside at the age of 15, and he did make me promise that I would never be financially dependent on anyone around me, and I will stand on my own feet. He didn't care what I did. He didn't care whether I should become a doctor or a lawyer or an entrepreneur. It didn't matter to him. To him, it was, if you find yourself alone, you can still survive. Whether you're a teacher, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you are an astronaut, couldn't care less. So I think he really was a driving force behind being fully independent. And I grew up a little bit in also a household where it was a humble household. It was, we didn't splash things here and there. Mm-hmm. And both my parents were entrepreneurs. So I grew up in that environment. My mom had her own bakery. My dad ran a medical business and 3 other businesses. He tried it all, from factories all the way to sending people to work abroad, right? So labor to Saudi Arabia at the time. Wow. So he's tried it all. We've seen him start businesses, close businesses, be successful at others. So I grew up summer holidays working for him, doing his accounting, and then baking cakes with my mom. So it was completely different. So went to Australia, landed in Australia in 97. Took me 3 weeks to find a property to live because I went to Sydney University. Okay. And so my dad had to pay for a hotel for 3 weeks and go around and figure out where to live. So as I started university in my 4th year, I met a friend of mine called Michael, and he was very entrepreneurial, and we talked about maybe we should start something. And that problem that I had when I first came in, I became the president of the International Student Society, which I realized so many of those international students were coming in and none of them had a place to live. So that's how my first business started. Okay. So I had the distribution. I was the international student rep anyway, so I got into all the welcome packs of the universities to students. And our business went in it, saying, if you're looking for accommodation, there is now a new website. So it was a prop tech. Okay. Similar to Property Finder today, but for Australia and for international students. So that was my first business. I was final year of university. We sold the business 2 years later. It was a small sale, but it was fun. It was 2 years of incredible experience. But then I had a Mauritian passport. When you have a third world country passport, you don't stay in a lot of places. And I'm talking about almost 25 years ago.
Yeah, I can imagine. Must have been even harder than now. Yeah,
it's nothing to do. We have now one of the strongest passports in the world, right?
Yeah.
But at the time, we didn't. And so I needed a way to stay in Australia and not to go back to Mauritius. So I looked for a job from everybody, the Bains and the McKinseys and all of them. And everybody said no because I didn't have a visa, a residency visa.
Yeah.
So I went to General Electric. It was my last resort. And I went and sat there at reception. I asked them for a job and they said they didn't have any and HR was busy. So I came back the next day and they told me the same thing. And I came back the next day. On the third day, I sat at reception and they came out and said, what do we do to get rid of you? I was like, I'm not moving until I get a job. I need a job. I said, look, it doesn't matter what you give me, just give me something. Finally, HR came out just to get rid of me, I'm guessing. And I pitched her and she was like, you know what? I don't know what we can do for you. We can't give you a visa under GE, but we can potentially give you a contractor visa. I was like, I'll take anything as long as I can stay here.
Okay.
So I started with a 3-day job for the CEO. Didn't know what they wanted me to do. They just thought he could use a pair of hands. Very quickly, 2 weeks in, I had a full-time job.
Oh, wow.
With GE, and we were building the first cross-sell program across the 11 different businesses at the time. From aircraft engine to commercial leasing, to aircraft leasing, to consumer finance, to light bulbs. So we had a one selling GE program where the CEO would go in and speak to the client, and then it would trickle down to the different MDs of the different businesses. Okay. Example, Qantas needed aircraft engines. Mm-hmm. They needed commercial finance, so aircraft leasing. They needed consumer finance to give loans to their consumers. They needed light bulbs for the plane. So actually, but then originally, every MD of each business was going to pitch to them. And so the program just went up one layer. So I did that for a couple of years. And then I was bored of Australia. I thought it was 6 years down, and I thought I wanted to move. At the same time, there was a role that opened up in the UK.
Okay.
GE in the UK wanted to start a digital bank.
Okay.
2004. Nobody understood digital in this massive 300,000 employee business. And so they said, listen, you've got a tech background. You've done stuff in Australia. Why don't you get shipped over? So I actually just ended in London to start the first GE Money Bank online. And what was incredibly interesting, as I went in, I realized the rates, they were charging 34% on a credit card. And very quickly, we got hit by the regulator for abuse of interest rates, and we were ticking that little box that said you'll take insurance on your credit card without really telling me. There was a lot of issues there.
Okay.
And instead of launching the bank, they looked at me saying, we need to fix this from a PR perspective. So we launched the first financial education program in the UK in collaboration with the government. So that was my first spill, which is how that whole financial education kind of came in.
All right.
So we did that for a year, built the whole site, first ever in the UK, got Times side of the week from the Times magazine and all of that. And then they go, okay, now we have to build a digital bank. So went in and then moved and became the e-commerce manager for GE, launched the digital aspect of credit card, personal loans, mortgages, the application online, all the way from application to closure. So we even came up for the first time ever that we could sign contracts online. Never been done in Europe. We figured out a way around the law, signed the contracts, and our drop-off rates from sending contracts to customers to getting them, normally the drop-off rate was 90%, we dropped it to 10.
Wow.
Yeah. But that's because when somebody's applying for a credit card, what was happening is the emotions were there. They wanted the credit card today, but then they couldn't get the paperwork until 3 weeks down the line. By the time the paperwork came, there was a cool-off period.
Yeah.
Right? So that was a phenomenon. We closed 100,000 cards within 2 months. It was a phenomenal success.
Wow.
So then I went up the ladder at GE, 3 to 4 years. 4 years later, I thought, I met this incredible Syrian lady. She was Syrian American. Her name was Najla. And she became my mentor. She was the CMO of GE at the time. And I said, that's where I want to be. Fast forward, I thought, I'm not waiting for 10 years to get there. I was 27 by the time. So I decided to go to business school. So I did a deal with GE and I said, give me 1 year sabbatical. I'm going to business school. I'll come back, but I want to work for the CEO directly. I want an SVP role as I get back. Yep, no problem. Don't pay for my MBA. I'll do it myself. I took a loan, got into INSEAD. 10 months later, that was a different story. I wasn't going back to the UK. I wasn't going back to GE. The world had opened up. You meet people from 80 different countries, different regions. Your mind opens up to different opportunities that there was in life. And so I kind of tried new things. So I got in January in my MBA intake. I looked for a job for my internship, ended up at Goldman for 3 months. Loved the company, but hated the job. Was not at all my kind of thing. I had an amazing time at Goldman. I have to say, phenomenal brand to work for. So then went back to school and then started looking for jobs again. But when you don't know what you want to do in life, the only job there is for you is consulting. Because you have no idea. And consulting is a place you go in, you learn incredible amount of structure, you learn incredible amount of how to send a message, how to communicate. But it also gets you to taste a whole lot of industry. So finally I got a job with Bain & Company out in Dubai, which I'd never been before. The only thing I remember about Dubai was when I was 15, Beckham bought a house on the Palm. And I remember thinking, what is it? I mean, who in their right mind builds a palm island out in the ocean? Do you not have enough land?
Yeah.
I was 15. That was the last time I ever heard of Dubai. In 2007, it was double-digit growth. It was going crazy, and women empowerment was starting to get off the ground, and they wanted women in banking and consulting and everywhere. So I rode that wave. I picked up my bags and came to Dubai, and I remember landing here going, oh my God, I have just landed in a construction yard. This has nothing to do with a fully made country. This is in progress.
Oh, yeah.
This is not
especially
even...
that time, right? For sure, yeah.
2007, Burj Khalifa didn't exist, none of that. So it was exciting. So I joined Bain & Company as the first woman in the office here in Dubai. We're 35. I think Bain is now 250 people. Did a private equity project with Carlyle Group, and we looked at the crane industry. Within 3 days, I knew everything there was to know about the crane industry. Can you imagine? At the time, 30% of all the supplies of cranes of the world was in these 25-kilometer radius of Dubai. I mean, you could not walk by 10 meters without seeing one, right?
That's crazy.
That's the time.
That's kind of what Saudi's doing now. Like, that's kind of what it's going through. It's going through that big jump in construction.
Saudi is going through its own growth story.
It reminds me of Dubai like 20 years ago.
It
like when
would remind
like kicked you off like that.
Just with a whole lot more pockets behind it, right?
Yeah, they're deeper. Yeah, for sure.
Very deep pockets. I think Saudi's opening the world. I have been going to Saudi for the last 10 years, and I have never seen such a transformation. Honestly, it's a pleasure to go there. Business has changed. Culture has developed in a way where, as a woman specifically, I used to go 10 years ago and I'd be stuck in my hotel room. Today, there is no difference between being a woman or a man in Saudi, and totally well accepted. And honestly, I'm incredibly surprised. And I think it's a great place to be at the moment.
Yeah.
So fast forward or backtrack a little bit, ended up in Dubai, 2 years, came in. The first thing I thought about was, wait a minute. The bank came to me and said, here's a credit card, here's a personal loan. So I'm like, wait, there has to be a comparison site. When I worked for GE and we launched the GE Money Bank, we had, the only people we worked with were aggregators. The money supermarkets of the world to compare. Nobody went to a bank directly or an insurance company directly. You go to an aggregator to be able to compare your options. Transparency was everywhere. It opened up competitiveness in the industry, which didn't happen here. Here, at the time, it was booming so much. The banks would say, you don't want us? I don't have time for you. I have other clients waiting for me, right?
Yeah.
So it was quite an incredible time. But I thought, no, there has to be something. There wasn't.
Okay.
But then I was working 16-hour days, 17-hour days, 20-hour days. I was like, there is no way I can do this right now. So I went off and continued my consulting career, and then eventually was hired by MasterCard to develop the MasterCard advisors here in the UAE. So we set up the team from scratch, set up the consulting arm, then fell pregnant, went on maternity leave, and Sukalmal was born when Rania, my 12-year-old today, was 6 weeks old. That's kind of where the idea came back. And I thought, okay, at that time, I was on maternity leave. How do I do this? Maybe there is a reason somebody never started this company.
Yeah, that's actually a good place to start thinking, right?
Right? So I'm like, well, why is there no? The number of people here, there was 50 banks, Khaled, and 450 credit cards. There is no way that's not a comparison site. That was just far-fetched to me. And so I thought, you know what? Let's test this out, because maybe there is someone who started it and maybe it failed for a certain reason. So I paid $2,500 to an Indian company, and I said, here's Money Supermarket, copycat, okay? Don't try and tell me to do UI, UX. These guys have done it. Just copy exactly the same colors, the same structure. I just give them the content, and we built it. And within 6 months, when I had to go back to work, I had raised the first round of angel round of funding of $300,000. And so I went back to work a week later. I handed in my resignation. I thought, and the first ever conference on startups was by ArabNet in Beirut. And we were chosen at the top 10 startups to come and pitch.
Wow, okay.
Randomly, right? And I remember those days. I remember jumping up and down, seeing on Twitter the list of startups that were chosen, which was completely, we got to know as publicly as everybody else. But ArabNet was the conference of the startups at the time. And so I went to Beirut, pitched the idea, and the rest was history. We went through an incredible journey, 3 rounds of funding until we exited the business last year.
Oh, so now you've exited now the business. Okay. So, wow, so many points I want to touch upon. First, I want to start on the entrepreneurship side, which is you're in a unique situation. You grew up in a house where both your parents were entrepreneurs. So in my case, for example, my dad's entrepreneur, my mom is a lawyer, so there's that balance. I've seen structure and I've seen the mess on this side.
So where are you tilting towards?
Me, definitely more the entrepreneurship side. I've worked in different companies in sales for a couple of years, but since the beginning I've always wanted to do my own thing. I just never knew what it would be, and then I started a podcast 3 years ago, and here I am now. So I would have never thought this is something that I could do full time, but very, very lucky. Yeah, as much wood as we can find. So growing up in that household, you understand there's a certain, you have a certain perspective on entrepreneurship that not many people would have had. So for you, was it always, because you seem to have fallen into, Souk al Mal, your entrepreneurship side, it wasn't planned. You came to Dubai, there was a gap in the market that you saw, and you're like, okay, I'm going to do something about it. But you had a lot at that point. You already had worked in quotation, in the corporate world for quite some time. So was that always the plan? Like at some point, when I find that thing, I'm gonna go do it, or was it? Did you have that itch, and just in the meantime, you're like, I'll work these couple of years until I find that thing, and then I'm gonna go do it.
No, it wasn't like this. It just felt right. I think entrepreneurship is not something you think about and you plan for.
Really, you don't think you plan for it?
I didn't plan for it.
Okay.
Some people could, but I think you don't sit and say, I will be an entrepreneur.
Okay, fine.
Right?
I get that.
It's more entrepreneurs as a matter of fact, on a personality. You're generally a problem solver. So you're constantly, everywhere you go, and I'm sure this is the same for you, even you're sitting at a restaurant, you kind of go, there's a better way to do this. Right? It is just this natural, constant problem-solving issue. And every other day you have this idea. I was like, oh, I could fix this. Oh, I could. And I think it's a natural. And it's the day you decide to jump into it is definitely based on circumstances, right? And
sure.
And there are places, things like, you would consider where, is it the right time from a financial perspective? Am I expecting 2 kids? Or twins, or triplets? Am I getting married soon? Do I want to save up a bit more so that I have 2 years of leadway in case the business doesn't work? I think there is that kind of smart ways to look and plan for entrepreneurship, but you don't plan to be an entrepreneur.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Couple of things I normally tell people saying, how did you jump ship? I started my career as an entrepreneur, and then I went to corporate, and then I went back into entrepreneurship. It just comes. I've never really planned anything. And it's funny because I have that conversation with my brother and he's constantly going, you must have a vision. I said, no, I don't. He's like, you can't go through life. He's a very successful banker. You can't go through life without a vision. And I said, well, I kind of disagree. I do have a vision of who I want to be. I don't have a vision of what I want to do and what role do I want to play. But I do have a vision of who I want to be and the state financially I want to be in. And emotionally I want to be in, right? I want to be free. I want to have financial freedom. I want to have freedom of mind and all of that. And I said, the reason I do that and I don't put specific targets is because I want to be adaptable. I want to be able to jump on that opportunity whenever it comes. Because when you have something that is so strict, it's almost like running a business. You have to adapt. You're going to go through a period of product market fit. If you can't adapt, you will die.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Right. So We've just recently started Yabi by Sukalmal. Yabi is a year old, and we've already adapted our business model twice already, right?
Well, there you go.
As you go along.
Yeah.
Now, if you are so set, and I think life plays the same thing, there are things that fall into your lap that you were not expecting. And you go, you know what? I'm going to jump on this because that makes sense to me. So the whole entrepreneurship route, I grew up in it, right? So it naturally comes to me.
Yeah.
I'm a problem solver by nature. Am I incredibly detailed operational person? Absolutely not. Normally we look at big picture. We want to get the dream. We want to go forward, and we dream big, and we come into the teams, and the teams look at us going, calm down.
Yeah. How do we make this happen?
Right. So then as you are, and as in the last 12 years I've been an entrepreneur, you do learn how to focus. And I had to adapt a few personality traits of an entrepreneur and go, okay, let's just focus here.
Yeah.
But focus doesn't mean let's not move away from the plan. And I've had this discussion over and over again, especially with the tech teams that I've had over the years, is I need you to be adaptable. Yeah. I know we've signed off on a plan for the last 3 months. I know this is what we said we're going to do, but circumstances in the economy has changed. Sure. Our feedback from our clients have changed. We need to learn how to adapt. It doesn't mean you deviate from your vision. You have a vision. We want to build financial education and raise the level of financial education in the country, that everybody who's signing that piece of contract know what they're signing. Yeah. Everybody who wants to buy a house, they understands the scams and they understand what the pitfalls are. Everybody who's going to buy a car, they understand the pitfalls, they understand the scams that's out there and how they can finance that car. Everybody out there in the UAE, I believe, needs to have a plan of where they're going to end up at retirement. It's never too early to think about it, right? Yeah. That's our vision. Is to raise the level of financial awareness, but get people to reach their financial freedom whenever they want to reach there.
Gotcha.
And there's always a plan to get there.
Yeah.
That vision has not changed.
Yes.
Even my business model might adapt to how do I reach that vision.
Gotcha. And so it's interesting on the personal finance stuff, because there was a show recently that came out on Netflix by a guy called Ramit Sethi. He's very well known in the financial world, and his show was called, I think, How to Make You Rich. And what he does is people would send in their bank statements, their credit scores, whatever. He takes a look, and then without even speaking to them, he'll tell you like what kind of person this guy is and so on. So it was. So I'm recently married, me and my wife have been living now for 6 months together and learning how to manage finances and stuff. So this was a really interesting show that brought in my mind, I'm like, okay, this is what I need to be thinking about. Maybe this is how I need to split up, your finances. This is how you do it. And it kind of touched on what you said, is just thinking about, like, he talks about designing your rich life. So, but that looks different to every single person. Mine and my partners could be different. Yours and yours, and even your collective one could be different. So the question becomes, and this is the hard part, is how do we get to that answer? What does my, in quotations, rich life look like? Because that's kind of what you're talking about. What does it want to look like once I've retired? What place do I want to be in? Who do I want to be? And all that stuff. I
love that question, and that is the answer you only can give, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we launched Yabi last year, or 7 weeks ago. We started working on it last year. We launched Yabi, and that's exactly why Yabi is here. And you should subscribe to it, by the way.
Subscribe.
And
Yabi,
download
Yabi,
it and look for it. Because what it does is, depending on what your goals are in life, we will then give you a list of courses you need to follow. Right?
Courses.
Yeah, there's all online classes, and online classes on Yabi is made by the experts of the industry. You've got the founder of The Entertainer, Donna Benton. We've got the CEO of the AECB, Marwan Lutfi. We've got the CFO of Do. We've got the CIO of Emirates NBD. We've got the GM of the electric vehicle at General Motors. So we've gathered a whole lot of really interesting and expert people in the industry to come and tell us about everything. You can learn from how to budget and save, all the way how to get married and make money work for you, all the way to investing in stock, investing in crypto, and asset allocation. Asset allocation is a very interesting part, because the class on asset allocation on Yabi tells you at 25, the way you allocate your asset is different than you allocate it at 50. Why? Because at 25, you've got another 40 years.
Yeah.
And compound, the power of compound is unbelievable. And we've got a retirement calculator on Yabi app, which you can go download and use. And it tells you, we ask you about how much you save every month and what your cost of living is. Mm-hmm. Based on those two and how many years you're going to retire, it gives you a graph on how much you're going to end up having in 40 years just by saving, say, 5,000 dirhams a month. But based on the amount of money you're spending, if you want to keep the same lifestyle, how much you will actually need if you just leave the money in the bank.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Then you can play with the rate of return. If you invest that money on a 4% return, you see live the graph changes, and it is mind-blowing how you sit there, you do nothing, you invest the money and make it work for you though.
Yeah.
How your retirement totally changes. How much money you're going to end up having totally changes.
Yeah.
So to get back to your question is, what does my rich life looks like? Being rich has two different meanings. One is emotional richness, as in, are you at peace of mind? Do you have a million dirhams debt on your head? Are you living the life that you want to live? And what is rich to you? Is it being able to travel business class 4 times a year? Or is it, there is no judgment. Everybody has their own meaning of richness. And I think that's what we need to try and get to. When we talk about financial education, it's not about don't spend. Nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
It's about spend the right way on the right things that you love. For someone, going to the gym 4 times a week and paying an expensive gym membership is a need. It's not a luxury. That is what makes him happy or her happy. And that's what gives them the peace of mind they need to live their life.
Yeah.
For others, it might be, you know what, I'm happy with minimalistic lifestyle.
Yep.
So their cost of living, being extremely happy and rich, is X. Your cost of living, being happy and rich, is X multiplied by 3.
Yeah.
That is what everyone should decide on their own.
Exactly.
Right? Based on what you want to achieve, then you work it back. Okay, I want to have 3 business class tickets a year. Okay, which means your cost of living when you retire will be $150,000 a year for you and your wife, let's assume. How do I get there? Well, depends on what you're going to do with the money. If you're going to put it on the World Index Fund that on average gives you 4% a year, then what is that number that you'll need to have at 65 that this is returning you 4% a year that gives you $150,000? You can find all this on Yabi, by the way. You can calculate it. And to me, that it is that's why there is no one financial education program. But what is important, though, is to learn how to do it and eventually get it done. So on Yabi, yesterday, we launched a whole new feature, which is a budgeting feature. So we educate you with all the online classes we have. We actually get you to get your credit score. We fund that just because we want you to know where you stand today. But we also allow you to connect to all your emails where your bank statements come in. And we read those bank statements and start giving you your trends of all your spend.
That's sick.
All your analysis.
That's so cool.
And we eventually on version 2 will start telling you things you can do to reach that number that you decided that you needed at the end of 65, right? Right now it's not there, but right now we analyze it, we tell you where you're at, we give you your different categorization, but more importantly, we give you the trends of what you've been doing. And if there is something off, we'll tell you, hey, this month compared to the last 6 months, your Amazon bill was 4x.
What's going on here?
What's going on here? Was that really needed? And eventually we will start helping you out saying, okay, your number for retirement was 5 million dirhams. You are currently at 1. So you've got another 90% to go.
Yeah.
How do we get there? And we can then help you start doing that. So that rich is a big word.
Yeah, and I love what you said about that. A rich has 2 definitions, and I've never heard that before. You know, the quality of the intangibles, your emotional state, your mentals, the relationships you have, the people, obviously, and then the other is the financial, which we all know about. But when everything you're saying about learning how to budget, how to invest, what should I do, how to do it, and I think this is, I'm going to speak from personal experience, but I imagine there's a lot of people in a similar boat. Is I don't really know where to start. When okay, I want to start working on my personal finances. Okay, great. Like I've done some Excels, I've just so I have a rough idea. I'm like, okay, this is about what is being spent every month, but that's where it stops. So I just have that idea, but now it's about, for example, on the investment side, something which I wanted to do for a while, but I've been struggling to get back into it because I got burned with the whole crypto thing, as I went in like everyone else did, there was all this hype, people were making money and I want to make money too, sure, and you leverage trade and whatever. So it was a very nice reality check for me personally, and he talks about Ramit was talking about how investing should be long term and he's like it should be boring.
I was just about to
like
say
nothing. You don't even think about it.
You didn't invest, my dear.
I
you
didn't.
Traded.
Exactly.
Right? And I think one of the message I want to send to everybody, we are not traders. We don't sit on this all day long.
Thank you.
Right? And investing is boring. So patience is key. Right? I always say, if you're not a trader, stay away from short-term gain. Now, if you have enough money that you don't mind losing a couple of thousand and you want to have fun, you can put this saying, you know what, $5,000, I'm going to keep it to play. So I buy today, I buy tomorrow, and I sell the next day. I've made a little $1,000. I'm super happy. But if that money gets burned, it doesn't change your life.
Exactly.
If it does, get out and get out now. The concept of investing is compound. Time horizon is everything. You start investing at 25 and start investing at 50 when you need the money at 65, totally different ballgame, right? And I think if you speak to everybody between the 40 and 50 today, they will tell you the one regret they have. And all the podcasts I've done on Yabi will tell you that, CFO of Do, CIO of Ambereen, they will all tell you the biggest regret is I did not start early enough. Because the realization of retirement, most of the time you're too busy having fun between 20 and 30. Most people don't even know where they are, right?
True.
But the other idea is I don't have enough to invest. And I totally disagree with that statement.
Yes.
You don't need to be a millionaire to invest your money. You can start as low as $100 and then you can go to 1,000. And then what matters is consistency. Stop looking at the markets. Just invest every month, put it away in whatever you're comfortable with. Because some people say, you know what, I can't deal with stock market because I panic. Then stay out of it.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
If you panic and it's giving you panic attacks, either you need to learn how to deal with those panic attacks, otherwise don't put the money in there. Why? This is where the richness come in. If I'm going to be stressed all day, I won't even make it to 65. Right? so I think people need
That's a good reminder,
find a way to feel comfortable. And the way you feel comfortable is education. We all are uncomfortable with things until we understand it.
Yeah.
Right? My son, who's 8, he hears about Yabi all day long at home. And he sat there and he looked at his sister. He said, did you know I can just sit on my bum and make money? How amazing is that? And for him, it was like this revelation that came through. And he's got a couple of thousand dirhams on the side. He's like, all right, mommy, I'm going to give you 1,000 dirhams. I'm like, well, nobody's going to take your money. But I will be your bank.
Sure.
And he said, all right, I was thinking about it. I want 1.2% a month. I was like, how much? Nobody gives 1.2%. I will give you 5% a year if you want to. And every month he has a little Excel that I did for him with his interest rate he's supposed to get. And every month he comes to me, he's like, okay, can you pay me my interest rate, please? And he loves looking at it grow, right? And then he said, oh, I want to play on the stock market. So I gave him some app that is kind of fake money. And he's lost all the money. Like he's looking at me going, and I look at him like, you're not a trader. And it was hilarious and I love it because he's learning it from young. And I looked at what he bought. He bought Apple, he bought Microsoft, he bought Uber, he bought Amazon. I was like, why did you buy those? Oh, because I use them. And that was his concept. It was like, oh, I use them, everybody use them, they're big, so they have to be good.
That logic is not flawed at all.
It's not flawed. It's a great logic.
Yeah.
But I tell him, I'm like, but you don't have time to look at them every day. You don't have the time to go and analyze all the statements. You don't have time to assess them and do proper due deal on these companies, which is why I'm now trying, like, why don't you look at index? He's like, what's an index? I'm like, well, the index covers it all. And the world index covers the top a portfolio with top companies of different countries. So if the US goes down and China goes up, you're still okay. And it will give you a lot less return, but it's a long-term strategy.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
Yeah.
The one concept people need to understand, making money fast, high returns generally comes with higher risk. There is no such thing as I'm going to make 100% in 3 days because all my friends have done it. It doesn't work.
Yeah. You're right.
There is a reason they're giving you high returns because there's a high risk associated with it. If there was no risk, why would anybody give you a high return if there was no risk associated with it?
Of course,
basic 101 of finance.
Yeah.
Right? So you talked about where do I start? The first thing I always tell people to start is figure out where you are today. Where are you today?
Okay.
Do a full analysis of your spending, of your budgeting, and you don't need to go into super details that you get. It has to be sustainable, right? So if you know approximately 20% is going in entertainment, the one rule I always is 50, 30, 20.
50, 30, 20.
Right.
Okay.
20% goes into your savings every month. 30% goes into things that you love doing, and 50% goes into your needs, including rent and whatnot. That's a framework that's used. If every month you can put 20%, no matter how much you earn, 20% of that money just goes into your savings, you build an emergency fund of 6 months your salary, because things will go wrong. And most people don't understand
that's kind of the metric that you want, like 6 months.
6 months okay. of your living costs should be in a cash account somewhere. Nobody ever touches it. Because if you ask most people, a lot of them, what got them into debt and into trouble is they did not have an emergency fund and they lost their job.
Yeah.
Or they did not have an emergency fund and they got sick. Whatever that reason was, if you have an emergency fund, it will also stop you from going into debt because you suddenly don't have anything to rely on.
Yeah.
So I always say 50, 20, 30, 6 months emergency fund. Once you've got this sorted, right, then you can move on to, all right, now how do I want to make the rest of the money grow?
So that's where you start.
That's where you start.
It's not just no matter where you are, start investing, is get to this first to like steady the ship and then figure out, okay, where do we want to take it?
If you're paying debt you cannot handle, you're not going to invest any money. Pay off those debt first. So get yourself into a place where your debt burden ratio is less than 35%. What does that mean is if you earn 10,000 dirhams a month, 3,500 only should be going into loans or mortgage or whatever that might be. Naturally, this is a healthy place to be, right? And then you can start looking at investing. But nobody should be looking at investing if already they can't pay off their debt. They've got debt that is 60, 70% of their income. You've got to sort yourself out first.
Yeah.
First thing. And then second thing is you do a credit score check. You need to understand where you are today.
Yeah. And this is what I wanted to come on to the concept of credit and debit, and because I only until recently I never really understood. I've known the dangers of a credit card because I have misused them in the past when I was younger. So I know that, and then I went off them for a while. And then recently I got one again, but obviously now I've learned my lessons from the past. But there is this debate I feel with, I feel we don't know how to use credit. I think credit can work to our advantage. And recently I've been listening to, certain podcasts, things have been popping up about this topic. And I'm like, okay, I didn't really know how to use it in that way. I didn't know how to use that debt actually, it sounds bad, but could be a very powerful tool if you want to do certain things like get homes, and start that cash flow process. So on the credit versus debit debate, I feel like there's a misconception there. I feel like we don't really understand the differences and the pros and cons of each. So could you just share with us what your thoughts are?
Very, very simple. First of all, download Yabi. Okay. There is a whole class on this, which I give myself.
Okay, perfect. Guys, right? Ambereen's class. Make sure to check it out.
The good, the bad, and the ugly of credit cards.
Okay, exactly.
Because there are good side of credit cards.
Yeah.
Right? So it's very simple. Is a credit card, if you will take a credit card, you need to make sure you pay it off every single month. Completely. Because if you don't, you'll be paying interest on the full amount.
On the full amount that's remaining?
On the full amount.
Oh, really? So
if you miss payments, you get hit by late payment fees, plus interest rate starts kicking in, right, on your outstanding.
Yeah.
Okay? Full amount that's left over. So if you're paying 5% a month, 95% you're paying interest on that, right? The next month, that 95% that was left has on top of that the interest that you're supposed to pay on it. And if you don't pay that again, you pay interest on the interest. So can you imagine how can this spiral out of control?
So it negatively compounds as well.
Yes, it absolutely does.
I never, I didn't know that. I
never
knew that.
Credit cards are incredibly dangerous because people tell you 5%. Your minimum payment is 5%. I've even had people coming to me thinking that 95% was free money. No, it's not. The bank's not going to pay this for you. This will sit on your debt. So first all, if you want a credit card, there are amazing things about credit cards. There's MRs you can get. You've got discount. You've got cash back. There are fantastic reasons to use credit card. But one important reason as well is when you take credit, you're building a track record of yourself with the credit bureau here, and therefore you get a credit score. A credit score is that 3-digit number in this country that dictates your credit worthiness. So if tomorrow you want to buy a house, which is an asset, which is an investment, which grows in value, if your credit score is not right, you will get declined.
And what if someone, for example, in my case, I don't have like a credit card here, then does that mean I don't have a credit score?
Have you had credit here before? If you've never had credit in this country,
maybe not.
You haven't even had a credit card, you will have a very low credit score, which will be a problem when you look for a loan to get a house.
Because
they don't know what you are.
Exactly. My score doesn't represent, what type of person this is.
Exactly. There is no track record of you and your behavior towards credit.
Gotcha.
Which is why it's a great reason to take a credit card and use it. As long as you use a credit card like a debit card, as in you buy it, but you need to make sure you have enough money for this expense. A credit card should not be used as a way to take credit, although that's the purpose of it.
Yes.
But the smart way is to be the worst customer for the bank. What does that mean? The worst customer of a bank is somebody who doesn't pay any fees, who doesn't pay any interest rates, and who takes on all the miles and all the. And I'm one of those.
Yeah.
Right. I have a direct debit on my account every single month. My credit cards get paid in full every single month. One time I've missed, and I can tell you I did hurt. I saw the late payment fees, I saw the interest rate, and I was like, never again. They are massive. So, good credit and bad credit. Good credit is normally when you're taking money from the bank and on credit to buy assets that grow in value.
Okay.
Buying a house. Without a mortgage, you can never get a house unless you're multimillionaire and you can buy a house. But that asset grows in value. So you take a mortgage today, you put the deposit down. In 5 years' time, that value of the asset, if you're not selling in a downturn, of course, but generally a house grows up. That is good credit. Now, bad credit is, I love those shoes. It's going to give me 30 seconds of pleasure. I can't really afford it, but I'll take credit to buy it. That has zero value, right?
Okay.
A car is debatable, depending on what kind of car you buy. But they do tell you, right? The moment the car gets out of the showroom, it's 30% depreciation. You've just lost 30% on that car.
Yeah.
So is it a smart idea to buy a new car or a used car? Now, there is a whole class on Yabi on top, on used or a new car, or rent or buy. So good credit is taking credit on assets that grows in value, and bad credit is on assets that depreciates in value. Now, there's a bit of a gray area in between. You take credit to invest in your education. Depending what you do with that education can then depend on whether that was good credit or bad credit, right?
True.
I took a loan to go and do an MBA, and I paid it back after my MBA. My salary quadrupled from pre-MBA to post-MBA. That was the best investment I could have done in myself.
Really? Wow.
Right? Now, I could have put that money on the stock or invested it. There is also that question is, where is the highest return? To me, investing in myself so that I can then for the next 50 years get a better salary, a better job, did make sense to me. But if I had invested that money, taken a loan, invested in money, gone to INSEAD and did nothing after INSEAD and just sat on my... No, that was totally lost credit.
Yeah.
That was bad credit.
Okay.
So again, good credit is assets that grows in value and that brings more to you than just happiness and 30 seconds, instant gratification.
Sure.
But assets that grows in value.
Yeah. First of all, this is like a free course for me. So this conversation is super interesting. I'm learning so much. But talking about, I love the example that you used with, your son and how he's already from a young age, he's looking for that interest and it makes him happy, but this experience that he's going through, like with what you're doing with him, is priceless, because that's going to teach him down the line how to have a much healthier investment, appetite, how to manage, stuff goes here. And I've spoken to many people on my podcast about like this concept of financial literacy and why it's so lacking. Like there are people who, if you're in the world of finance, I could see how you'd have a better understanding. But even myself who studied it, I still would consider myself a beginner and in stuff that I feel is like basics to know, you know, like budgeting, like accounting, like all these like simple things that anyone should know. We call them
basic life skill.
Well, there you go.
And no one has ever taught this to us before.
I feel there's more of an emphasis nowadays. Like there's starting to be more of an emphasis on financial literacy, but you're literally in that world. So what have you seen so far with your experience with, you know, Yabi?
Absolutely. Listen, we are the generation where it was taboo to talk about money, right? I grew up, my parents would never tell us how much they earned. My parents would never tell us. It was not our problem.
It's similar, actually.
To solve.
Same here.
That actually causes more damage than reality check. So I had, on Yabi, again, I keep talking about it because I love what we build, and I think it is absolutely the application that everybody should have on their phones because of the learning that comes out of it. Your money script gets taught to you between 0 and 7 years old. We've got one class on Yabi called Money Trauma, done by Hiba Ben Falki. Amazing. She's known as a mind hacker. You can check her on Instagram as well. And Hiba tells us about how the money scripts starts between 0 and 7 years old. The concept of money, how you spend, how you save, is defined by what you've seen between 0 and 7 years old. So, for example, if you're in a household where your parents have told you consistently or see the world as rich people are bad, money will always have a bad connotation for you.
Okay.
You will grow up that way. Money is bad. I don't deserve it. This is for bad people. This is not for me. So they consistently struggle. Other household, money is a tool. Look, the more you have, the more luxury you can buy. It won't buy you love. It won't buy you sanity, but it will buy you luxury, and it's a tool. Life gets better with it, but there is more to it.
Yeah.
So then you grow up with money being a tool. You can grow up with, it's not about super hard work and it's so difficult to earn. Some other people think, you know what, if I want to make money, I have to give up everything else and sacrifice everything, my family, my life, so I can make as much money as possible. That's another money script. There's 5 different money scripts and there's some people who are ashamed of it. I should not show anybody. I don't think this is right. So from 0 to 7, it's really where your money script gets built into you. Wow. And I love when she says, the way you buy a sofa is the way you do everything else in life. So somebody goes to a shop and you buy a sofa. Do they look at this a million times before they decide? Do they go back and check every single option before they decide? Or they are just spontaneous, I like the sofa, I'm taking it, I'm going home, because I don't have time to look at it. And interestingly enough, because we all work in patterns, right? So it's the same way we invest our money. Do we look at the stocks 5 times a day and then decide, or are we more you know what, I'm just going to let it go. It's a tool. I invest every month. I won't even look at it. I just know this money is going to be touched in 20 years' time.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. That class is one of my favorite classes on Yabi. So it comes from a very young age, and it's always been taboo. There is one area I started doing at home. I'm still wondering. I mean, culturally, it doesn't sound right because I grew up in a very different household. But I realized it really helped. So I started giving my kids and showing my kids the P&L of our household. This is how much income is coming in, but this is how much we spend and on what. The eye-opening was unbelievable for these kids. And they were like, oh, I didn't realize when we go out for dinner. Oh, when you add it all up, mommy, it becomes a lot. I was like, yes. So are we starting to realize now that at the end of the day, it's a P&L. Money's coming in, money's going out, and this is how much is going to investment, and look at every month how this is growing. So that was taboo when I grew up. So I think things are changing, and I think there's a whole lot of awareness coming in. Now, it's still not in our education system.
No, and there
is no curriculum at school, which is why we built Yabi, because I actually personally believe financial education is a personal responsibility.
Absolutely.
I am not going to sit around and wait for the schools and education system to put it anywhere in the world. I want to teach the kids because I think it's my responsibility to teach them about how to become money savvy when they get older.
Yeah.
It is a basic life skill. That's why we work.
Yeah.
That's why we try and do things like side hustles. Our dreams, our goals, our kids' dreams, at the end of the day, all lies under, can we afford it or not?
True.
So if you think about it, this is our basic life skill. How come we don't learn about it?
Yeah.
So Yabi, we're trying to change this, and that's the vision of it, right?
Okay.
But I do agree there is a lot more awareness out there. It's a lot more acceptable. It's a lot less taboo. And people are talking about it.
Yeah.
I would love now to see people coming out and saying the mistakes they've done. We talk a lot about what should I do, but let's learn from people's mistakes.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't need to make the same mistakes that they've done.
And I made a big one. I remember in 2008, the real estate market here was going absolutely nuts. I was 29. And I fell into the trap. Everybody was buying. And I would hear, oh my God, this person made that much. What did I do? I went short term. And guess what?
Yeah.
I bought, the property never grew.
Yeah.
Right? I actually lost money on the property. And it does make me realize it's not because everybody else is doing it that I should be doing it as well.
Exactly, yeah.
And never invest in something you do not understand.
True.
Learn, educate yourself. And again, that is a personal responsibility. I always go out when I do my sessions with the companies, because Yabi as well is given to the consumer, so you can subscribe to it yourself, but we also do it through employers.
B2B as well.
B2B. Okay. So employers could decide we want Yabi as part of our wellness program, and we give all the employees codes for a certain subscription model.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. And when I do those sessions, but we do one session in every company when we go out there, and we do this session, I always ask one question: what's your number? And normally out of 100 people, 4 people raise their hands. These guys know what number they need to achieve at 65.
Yeah.
And that's when we open the calculator on Yabi and go, all right, let's put your income. And the faces change every single time. And then when I ask them, why do you not know your number? To me, not knowing your number is almost going to Sharjah to a restaurant without a pin location. I know a little bit of the direction, but you know what? I might run out of petrol before I even get there. I don't know where I'm going. I just know I need to save, but I have no clue where I'm going, and I might never even get there. And knowing your number, and you can do it on Yabi again, but knowing your number then allows you to work backwards and say, okay, how do I get to that number? And you know what? Actually, that number is unrealistic. I need to make a few changes in lifestyle. I'm okay with this.
Yeah.
Or that number is realistic, but now that I look at what I'm spending, why am I doing this? All right, to reach that number, this is how much I need to put aside. But we should not also forget to live today.
Yeah.
Right. There's one area in which you ask me, what does rich mean? If I don't leave my house, I don't pay for anything because I'm trying to save every single dirham I get, that is not being rich. I may be rich in money in 60 years, but I haven't lived.
Yeah.
So there's a balance to reach, right? And that's where the education comes in.
Yeah. And the education is the most, honestly, it's the most important part. And what you're, I love the vision of Yabi. It sounds like something I would definitely use, because I need to learn. And like what you said, it's a personal responsibility. And I feel it's a personal thing. The fact that I don't know that is me being irresponsible. Not that I live irresponsibly, but when you said, for example, what's your number? And then you're like, oh, only 4 people,
out of 100.
Out of 100. And that part didn't surprise me. But when you said that, I realized the reason you don't think about the number is because you don't want to know what the real answer is after that.
I think there's 3 things. There's one, a lot of people don't want to face it because they get scared.
Exactly.
But then it will never get there. If you know, at least you can plan for it. Then there's no reason to be scared anymore, right? At least you know where you stand. But 2 is people tell me it's too complicated. They don't even know where to start.
Well, yeah, that too.
They don't even know how to calculate it. Well, Yabi now has a retirement calculator. It's easy. It's simple. You can use it. It'll give you an approximate. And it takes into account the inflation rate ongoing as well. So there is help, and there are resources out there. But I do believe people need to take responsibility of their own future.
Yeah.
Right. And I think what we're trying to do is make it easier for them to do so by giving them the resources that they need. Yeah.
It's kind of like how you have like your bank app. Yabi would be the complementary app that would go along with that, to see. So this is where my money comes, and over here is where I learn and figure out what do I need to do with this money to get to, where I'm trying to go, if I want to save and so on. And I love what you said about that example is, if I didn't go out and I didn't spend, maybe in 60 years I'd be rich financially, but like I haven't lived the life. And it is that balance, and there's different priorities, and you go through different stages. So it's always going to be that push pull. Wherever I always say, whenever you find balance in one area, you've lost it. You've probably lost it somewhere else.
So I did a podcast with one of my very first employees, and she's phenomenal. She's an influencer on Instagram today. She moved from 10,000 followers to 100,000 in 14 days and whatnot.
Wow, shout out.
And we spoke a little bit about her personal journey, because she moved from a job into now being an influencer, which means variability. And I remember when she was working with us, every single week the Amazon box would come up, or the Namshi box, or the Unas box, every single week. And I asked her, what is the one purchase that literally hit her and woke her up? She said, I was earning 10,000 dirhams at the time, and I was seeing those Hermes slippers on Instagram everywhere, and I felt if I didn't have one, I wasn't fulfilled. She walked into Hermes, spent 2,800 dirhams on the slipper. She said she felt so happy, but the moment she walked out of that shop, she said 30 seconds later, she said that her heart sank. And she said, I've just spent 30% of my salary on a pair of slippers. And it hit her, and she went, what am I doing? This is insanity. I was happy for 30 seconds. I'm done with them now. But it was the thrill of, I want them. And she said to me, it was all social media driven, right? And then she still has them, but she said it was the biggest regret of my life. What I could have done with that money would have been, and it wasn't even something that gave me long-term pleasure. It was instant gratification. And
100%.
And that brings back to, are you fulfilled as a person to start with, or do you need all of these things to fill up gaps or
different
voids?
Vices, different things,
And that's why I believe, being rich or planning for the future has a lot to do with yourself as well. So I think there's work to be done on yourself, understand where you stand, what triggers you, what gives you that pleasure. Right? To me, I love golf. I could spend on golf and lessons and want to get better at it. But maybe I go out, I don't know, twice a month to some really fancy restaurant, because it's great, but it's not, it doesn't do a lot for me. It's nice to have,
but
right?
Sure.
But I would rather do my golf. I'd rather take the kids on holiday. So experiences, to me, it's versus things. They're experiences that really triggers me. So it's really finding out truly what brings you that level of happiness, and accordingly budget for that.
And like you said, everyone's level of happiness is different. Everyone's rich life looks different to them. You might be a person, just as in your example, you were saying, that nice dinner I'd rather spend it on something I love. But for other people, that let's say more superficial side or stuff, that might be something that's very important to them, which is also perfectly fine. But you have to then figure out how can you, exactly what you're saying, budget to be able to afford all these, different types of things, because they're very expensive, and to maintain that is
the basics of it is nobody can judge you, and nobody should judge you.
Everyone does, but yes, no one should, but everyone does. Yes,
right? And there is no judgment into how you're living your lifestyle and how you manage your money. It's your money, it's your life, and it's a lifestyle that you've chosen. What we're asking at Yabi is make sure that whatever lifestyle that you've picked and chosen that's the right lifestyle for you, you're managing it well, and it will get you to financial freedom at some point.
And that's, at the end of the day, that's no matter with what we're doing, all the different services, the companies, everything we do is all to make money, because to get that financial freedom, so your family doesn't have to worry, so you don't have to worry.
I love a statement that says, and I love this, freedom, real freedom starts with financial freedom. Because once you have financial freedom, you're really free.
That's actually, I've never heard that one, but I had a guest on the podcast, and I was asking her, can money buy happiness? And I know based on our discussion, it's something that, you don't believe it can do a lot of things for you, but to buy you love, to buy you happiness, it can't. And she said something, she's like, my mom told me, she is like, money can't buy you happiness, but if you have a problem that can be solved with money, if you don't have the money for that, your problem's just doubled. So I'm like, okay, so that's how, that's a good way, interesting way,
I think that's where you talk about money as a tool.
There you go.
It's a tool to buy luxury. It's a tool to buy convenience. It's a tool to buy convenience, luxury, speed.
And I think we don't understand that as people. Everyone says it, like you said it, I've said it, money is a tool. Money is a tool. I've heard it 1,000 times. But it doesn't feel like a tool to me, which is the interesting part. It's not like, oh, get that knife so you can cut that bread. Okay, I understand that. Get the knife, cut the bread, fine. But money has I think we say it's a tool, we'll logically say that, but emotionally we still won't see it that way. And I think that's maybe where there's a big challenge in in all of this, where all of, in learning the literacy and putting in the effort in getting to that stage.
Which is exactly why I say the real freedom starts with financial freedom, because then the choice is yours.
There you go. Yeah, you said it. And you're 100% right. And now looking forward with Yabi, and obviously fintech here is growing a lot. AI now, is all over the place. There's so many platforms and AI tools that even I use now, so I've seen the benefit of it. Where do you see it in, and I'm sure based on what you're doing at Yabi, there must be a component of machine learning or AI to give you those graphs or those projections and so on. So where do you see, what does the future of finance look like now with all this, AI coming in?
Look, I think it's phenomenal, right? I mean, AI is all about machine learning and looking at trends and looking at data and coming out and learning potentially what the future looks like. And I think when it comes to finances, which I'm hoping at some point anyway, is depending on your spending, depending on your lifestyle and how you're living, just by looking at the way I see it going is just looking at what your lifestyle has been up, will be able to tell you this is the type of person you are, this is the kind of lifestyle that will adapt to you, and therefore that here is an automated budget of what you should stick to, and you'll be fine. So it's all, you won't even have to think anymore, right? I believe AI will even tell you the kind of life you should be living, according to what they've seen in the last 20 years, the way you spend, the way you save, the places you go, the way you visit, the people you hang out with. They'll take it all out. I believe they will even tell us who we are.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Because I'm not sure how many of us know who we are.
And
eventually plan our whole financial life for us. And you would even see health data into it, where the AI technology will be able to tell you the propensity of you to get cancer, to get this and that, whatever it might be, is X%, and therefore let's put aside some money to deal with this when it comes. And the way we see your lifestyle living, you'll probably get hit at 40 with diabetes, or at 60 or 8, whatever it might be. I think at some point of time, and I don't know how many years, our whole lives and future will be almost giving out to them based on the last 40 years, 20, 30, 40 years that we've lived.
Yeah.
But taking all our components and putting into one place, from your health data, your financial data, your exercise data, your relationships data, your mood data, and where do you get annoyed, and how does your heart rate go up when, who you are with and around, what kind of impact they have on your health. I think all of this will all boil into one place to give us what your future looks like.
That's definitely going to happen. I can't imagine what that would look like yet, but looking at even all the different areas you mentioned, like health, financial, emotional, it's a very exciting yet scary thing at the same time, because the future is going to be based on all this data you have about me, and the data can't really lie. So I could in the future maybe look at a one page, I'm like, oh, this is who Khaled is, exactly who he is,
and who he will be in the next 30 years.
This is what Khaled, that's a great point.
This is what Khaled is going. This is what the future looks like. All right, now do I want to hire this guy or not? That's what his future looks like. This is when he's going to hit a downfall in his life here and an upside here, and he's going to hit with whatever. I believe your whole future, based on all the data they've collected in the last 20, 30, 40 years and seeing patterns, whatever chip we've got in us in some future, will also be able to give you what your future will look like.
Yeah.
From a financial perspective, it's all going to be merged into one place, because I think the humanity will be, we still live in silos.
Yeah.
Our life is still treated very much in silos today. Our financial life, our health life, our emotional life. All of this with AI technology will be all merged into one. And I think that's the exciting part. It's extremely concerning. It's extremely scary. And I know there's a lot of concerns around in the industry already about what this is going to turn out to be and the speed that it's going to. But it's also quite exciting to see what's going to come. Yeah,
no, for sure. And I think especially in the world of finance now, obviously with ChatGPT, I've just played around with it. You can make, trading bots and doing all, there's so much potential in the financial world that we don't know what it's going to be capable of. But it's exciting to see, what's going to come out of that in the future. And I think Yabi, you guys are now, you're kind of at you guys are like the crossroads now. you're trying to educate all of us on one side who need financial literacy education, want to manage their money better and so on. So you're educating us. We're starting to use the app. So then the app will start gathering data about me or whatever. And then based on that, you're going to help plan my future. So you guys are in that transition phase, which is really interesting.
Eventually, absolutely, the version 2.0, what we would love to do on this is really being able then to auto budget for you.
Well, there you go.
And start telling you almost like a trading platform saying, okay, too much money has gone to this. Let's put some money here. You got to spend less on this month. And live, right? All right, you've hit your entertainment budget this month. We're done. If you still want to create entertaining, okay, we'll have to cut somewhere else. So that's kind of where Yabi 2.0 should actually be heading to.
Yeah.
But also automate all your savings, automate your investments, and everything goes through where you have time to do other things and enjoy the work that your money is doing for you.
Yeah, you want to have it as an app that you use, kind of like you use Gmail, for example, that you check every day and so on. Something that you're just going to go to every day and like, oh, what's going on in my, like, I haven't seen it in the last week. Okay, cool. I know where I am now. And then like I move forward.
You should know at all times your financial health.
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah. And I know you guys do a calculator for that. I'm going to try it out. I haven't had the chance to yet. Yeah. Ambereen, I want to be conscious of our time because I know you have to run off soon. So my last question for you, and this is questions that we ask all our guests. So the whole message with the podcast is to show that learning, success comes in many forms and that learning never stops. And everyone has, I believe, that game changer learning, or sometimes it wasn't maybe a phase, was a specific incident, but over time throughout your career when you reflect, there's something that you picked up that really like opened your eyes to like a whole new world. Mine, for example, was accountability. Once I realized, I'm like, oh, I wasn't being accountable to myself and the importance of it. Once I adopted that, it changed my life in so many different ways. So I'm curious to hear, what was your game changer learning?
I don't think there was a game changer learning, but I think the one thing that I teach to others today, which hit me when I was very young, was intimidation.
Intimidation?
So I look at my team, and a lot of times if they're talking to anybody senior, they start shaking and they start becoming nervous and they don't really know how and why, and they feel very intimidated by someone just because they've got a few years ahead of them and they've been successful and they've done things that people are talking about. And I always tell my team, especially the sales team, and I said, we're all human beings. We all have vulnerabilities. We're all normal people, quote unquote, when we get home. We have kids, we have families, we've got tough days, we've got good days, we've got bad days as well. There's sometimes we just want to walk away. We're all the same. So I learned when I was very young, when I was working at GE, was the confidence level. It's not because I'm speaking to the CEO of GE that I should tremble and I should shake and I should be scared and I should feel judged. He is another human being. Yes, he's reached, at the time he was 20, 30 years older than me. You respect everybody. It doesn't, it's not that there's a higher level of respect because somebody has achieved something in life. It's human respect is basic 101. And that hit me very young, which what led to very high level of confidence when you stop feeling intimidated by anyone, whoever they are.
Yeah.
Respect is extremely important. Professionalism is very important, but no intimidation.
Yeah.
And I think that changed quite a bit of how you portray yourself, because then you show a lot more confidence, you show a lot less fear, you show a lot. And it does help a lot in the professional world. And you don't stammer anymore. And you don't kind of think about what am I going to say.
Yeah.
So it's not like it was a game changer, but it's a realization that I now, when I look at my sales team, I realize, oh wow, I remember those days. And I remember what changed it for me. You know, when I imagine someone as a grandfather with the grandkids, everybody is a human being, and that level of intimidation can very quickly destroy you from having a proper conversation.
Sure,
or
absolutely.
You get so nervous that you don't give the best of yourself. But otherwise, to me, it was a lifelong learning, and I don't think I've stopped. Yabi is the third business, and I'm still learning every day just how to be a CEO, how to be a leader, the emotional aspect of it, and how to pick up myself when things are not going very well. And I go through tough days, and it's been a roller coaster in the last 12 months to build this business where you're looking at the product market fit. Does it work? Does it not work? But it was a lifelong journey, and I mean, I've got so many stories about what I've learned in the last 20 odd years of working, and it never ends.
Yeah.
But I think what I push people to think about is confidence in oneself. Less people would question you if you speak with confidence, right? And if you know your status.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned something about accountability. I actually love this word because I believe we're accountable not just at work, but on every level in life, right? Accountability is something that I look for whenever I ask people to join me in the team, is accountability and also the ability to accept that you made a mistake.
Yeah.
So I've learned things not just with me doing things, but by seeing others, right?
Yeah.
When I've realized is when a team member does not accept that there has been a mistake that's been done, that worries me because it tells me they will not learn from their mistakes. Mistakes are okay. It's totally okay. I still make them every day. But if you don't realize you've made them, this means you will make them again and again and again. Accountability to me is also being accountable for your actions, as in that was a bad idea. Fine, we move on from it in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
All I need to understand is you've learned from this, and by the way, it is a learning process. So I see people coming in like not accepting any mistakes. I'm like, it's normal. If you don't, then there's a problem.
Yeah.
Because that's how we learn. We actually learn from our mistakes. We learn from getting no's.
Yeah.
No's are a path to a yes. Mistakes are a path to no mistakes.
Yeah.
But the ability to accept it and to say, oh yeah, that wasn't so great. All right, now I know what I've done wrong and I'm not going to do it again. It actually gets you better and better and better. And that's how you see employees in a company or at work. How you get better and how you get promoted is people who are accountable.
Yeah, people who are accountable. And I love it. I didn't expect you to say intimidation. That was a new one for me. But when you were talking about it, I resonated with it a lot because that's one thing I never liked in the corporate world, which was it felt like because like they're like, a VP from America is coming, make sure you guys are like dressed right and questions and whatever. And I'm like why? Like, he's just a guy, literally word for word he said. I'm like, this is just another human who is 30 years ahead of me and has done 30 years more of stuff. That's it. Respect, and what you were saying, respect to the person and the accomplishment, all that. But who you are as a person is going to be, like, just because you are all that, if you act in a certain way, doesn't mean I have to accept that, doesn't mean I have to respond to you in that way and like, oh, please, I always hated that it was very bureaucratic and political and you have to, dress a certain way, speak a certain way. I'm like, nah, doesn't fit. That's not my, that's not my world. I'm not a yes man. You're not going to get that from me. But obviously one thing I learned, and I think it might have gone a bit too far in my case because, again, there's level, and something I'm realizing recently is there's levels to everything. Whether I'm for something or against, and you might be for and against, but
it's called moderation and maturity.
There you go. Thank you. I was looking for the words, but I guess that's moderation and maturity.
The more mature you grow into in your career, the more moderate you become. Right?
Yeah.
Because you're not going who about one or and you're just jumping up and down to defend your cases. Because there's lots of gray areas in the world, and you walk around it and you adapt yourself to the gray areas that's going through. And certain reactions are relevant in some cases, but it would be irrelevant into the same situation but in a different context. So that's where moderation and maturity came.
Exactly. And like you said, and context is everything.
Context is everything.
Everything to whatever situation, deal, finance, everything is context-based. Ambereen, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. Really, this has been such a fantastic conversation for me. I've learned so much. It's like getting a free course, and like, this is fantastic. I'm learning so much about finances. I think definitely for me personally, I leave this conversation with a new outlook on finances, and it gives me more encouragement on, okay, now maybe with like Yabi, for example, I have a tool that will help me start this educational process a lot faster. So I really appreciate that. And I wanted to say thank you for your time. Anyone listening to this, no matter your age, finance affects all of us. It's something that we live with every single day. You can take something away from this episode that is definitely going to help you. Ambereen, if people want to reach out with you, work with you, connect with you, where can they get in touch?
LinkedIn is the best way to do
LinkedIn?
it.
Okay.
I'm very active on LinkedIn, so please do reach out.
Okay, LinkedIn it is. So guys, check out LinkedIn for Ambereen's page. Check out Yabi. Make sure to download it on the App Store. Ambereen, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
You're welcome. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the AUD podcast channel. We really hope that you enjoyed it and learned something from it. We have a lot of incredible guests lined up for you on the show, and we're so excited to bring you their inspiring stories. To stay up to date with all the latest episode releases, please make sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the podcast on the AUD Instagram page at AUD Dubai.